September 27, 2018, somewhere over Afghanistan. A pilot whose name you'll never know is about to make history, and he has no idea. He's flying a machine that took 2 decades and nearly $500 billion to build. Critics called it a catastrophe, a money pit, the biggest defense failure of the modern era. But right now, at 30,000 feet, none of that matters. Because in less than 60 seconds, this pilot is going to prove every single one of them wrong. This is the story of how the world's most controversial fighter jet became the most lethal weapon in modern warfare, and you probably never even heard about it. The F-35 Lightning II, you've heard the criticisms. Over budget, behind schedule, plagued with problems. For years, defense analysts tore it apart, senators held hearings. Journalists wrote scathing articles about how this 5th-generation stealth fighter was going to bankrupt the military. But here's what they don't tell you on cable news. While everyone was arguing about cost overruns and software glitches, something extraordinary was happening in the shadows. The F-35 wasn't just flying, it was fighting. Real missions, real combat, real results, and the countries operating it. They weren't complaining, they were ordering more. Today we're going to take you inside the classified world of F-35 combat operations, from the deserts of Afghanistan to the volatile skies over the Middle East, from the deck of Britain's newest aircraft carrier to the most contested airspace on Earth. This is the story they don't want told, because when the F-35 works, it doesn't just work, it dominates. Let's go back to that September night in Afghanistan. Marine Corps' captain will call him Reaper because that's the only name we're allowed to use, is flying his F-35B from a forward operating base. It's not his first combat mission, but it's the first time he's carrying live ordnance in this particular aircraft. The F-35B is the Marine Corps' variant. It can take off from short runways and land vertically like a helicopter. It looks like science fiction, and on this night, it's about to write a new chapter in aviation history. Reaper gets the call. Taliban fighters have pinned down a coalition unit in a valley. The situation is deteriorating fast. He's 20 minutes out. Now, here's where it gets interesting. In a conventional fighter in F-16, an F-18 Reaper would need coordinates, visual confirmation, multiple radio checks with ground controllers. It's a careful, methodical process that takes time. Time those troops on the ground don't have. But the F-35 isn't conventional. Through his helmet-mounted display, this insane piece of technology that costs $400,000 on its own, Reaper can see everything. And I mean everything, the landscape below him rendered in perfect detail. Thermal signatures of the friendly forces, and there, in the tree line, the heat signatures of the enemy position. The F-35's sensors have already done the math: distance, wind speed, optimal approach angle. The jet isn't just carrying him to the fight. It's thinking with him. He locks the target, releases, the GBU-32 falls away into the darkness. 12 seconds later, the target ceases to exist. The Marines on the ground are safe. The Taliban fighters never even knew the jet was there. That's not just stealth, that's dominance. And here's the kicker: this mission, this historic first combat strike by a Marine Corps F-35, barely made the news. A few paragraphs in defense news, a brief mention in military blogs. The Pentagon confirmed it happened and moved on. Why? Because by the time they announced it, the F-35 had already flown dozens more. Fast forward to 2019, Operation Inherent Resolve. The fight against ISIS, the Islamic State, is collapsing, but cornered enemies are dangerous enemies. Coalition forces are pushing into the last pockets of resistance in Syria and Iraq. It's brutal, close-quarters urban warfare. And overhead, watching everything, are the F-35s, but here's what makes this different from every other air campaign in history. The F-35 isn't just a striker. It's a quarterback. Think about it like this. In older jets, each aircraft operates somewhat independently. They get their orders, fly their missions, share some data, and come home. It works, but it's limited. The F-35 changes everything. Every jet in the air is connected through something called the Multifunction Advanced Data Link, MADL for short. It's a secure, jamming-resistant network that lets F-35s share targeting data, sensor information, and threat warnings in real time. One F-35 sees an enemy radar installation. Every F-35 in the battle space immediately knows about it, and air-to-air threat appears. The entire formation reacts as one organism, but it gets even better. The F-35 can take all that information and feed it to older jets, F-16s, F-15s, even bombers and drones. Suddenly, aircraft that were designed in the 1970s can see through the fog of war. They're getting targeting quality data from a stealth fighter they can't even see. American pilots who flew both legacy aircraft and F-35s in combat called it playing a different sport. One F-16 pilot said, and I'm quoting here, "Flying with the F-35 is like suddenly being able to see through walls." During Inherent Resolve, F-35s conducted hundreds of strikes. But more importantly, they orchestrated thousands. They turned the entire air campaign into a synchronized machine. ISIS didn't stand a chance, not because of overwhelming numbers, but because of overwhelming information dominance. June 2021, the Eastern Mediterranean Sea, HMS Queen Elizabeth, Britain's largest and most powerful aircraft carrier since World War II, is cutting through the water. On her deck, an unlikely sight: American and British F-35s sitting side by side. This is Carrier Strike Group 21, the UK's triumphant return to carrier aviation after a decade-long absence. And they're not here for a pleasure cruise. The Queen Elizabeth is heading toward the Middle East as part of Operation Shader, Britain's contribution to the anti-ISIS coalition. For the first time since the Falklands War in 1982, the Royal Navy is about to launch combat strikes from a carrier. But there's a twist. The F-35B on that deck isn't just a British investment. It's proof that the jet's most criticized feature, the short takeoff, vertical landing capability that added billions to the program cost, actually works under real-world conditions. Royal Navy and RAF pilots start flying combat sorties over Iraq and Syria, day after day, mission after mission. Taking off from a moving ship in the middle of the ocean, striking targets hundreds of miles inland. Landing back on deck as the sun sets, and it works flawlessly. One British pilot, speaking on condition of anonymity, said something that stuck with me. He said, "Every criticism we heard about this jet, too complex, too expensive, too delicate, disappeared the moment we took it into combat. It just worked." The British flew over 3,000 hours during that deployment. Not a single mission was cancelled due to F-35 malfunction, not one. Think about that for a second. A brand new aircraft on a brand new carrier with a newly reformed carrier air wing, and it performed like a seasoned veteran. The Royal Air Force was so impressed they immediately ordered more jets. So did the Royal Navy. Now we need to talk about Israel. Because this is where the F-35 story gets really interesting and really classified. Israel calls their F-35s a deer, which means mighty in Hebrew. And from the moment they received them, Israeli Air Force pilots knew these jets were going to change Middle Eastern power dynamics forever. Israel faces threats that most Western air forces can't even imagine. They're surrounded by adversaries with advanced Russian air defense systems, S-300s, S for OOS, Pantsir systems, some of the most sophisticated anti-aircraft weapons ever built. For decades, Israel relied on incredibly skilled pilots and electronic warfare to survive. But there's only so much skill can do against a modern integrated air defense network. The F-35 changed the equation. In 2018, the Israeli Air Force quietly announced they had conducted the world's first combat operations with the F-35, where they wouldn't say against what targets. Classified. How many missions? Not telling. But reports started leaking. Satellite images showed mysterious explosions at weapons facilities in Syria. Iranian-backed convoys destroyed on remote desert highways. Hezbollah weapons transfers interdicted. Former Israeli Air Force Commander Amikam Norkin finally confirmed it in 2018. Israeli F-35s had flown combat missions deep into hostile airspace. They had penetrated areas protected by Russian-made air defense systems. And they had done it undetected. Let that sink in. Israeli F-35s were flying over Syria country with overlapping Russian, Syrian, and Iranian air defense coverage, and nobody knew they were there until the bombs hit. One retired Israeli general said something that gave me chills. He said, "The F-35 doesn't just give us a tactical advantage, it gives us strategic surprise. Our enemies know we have them, they know we can strike. But they have no idea when, where, or how. That uncertainty is more valuable than any missile." By some estimates, Israeli F-35s have conducted hundreds of combat missions. They've struck in Syria, Iraq, possibly Yemen, potentially as far as Iran itself. The Israeli government doesn't confirm or deny any of it, but here's what we know for sure. Every country in the Middle East with advanced air defenses is terrified of these jets. And every country without them is desperately trying to figure out how to defend against them. So let's address the elephant in the room, the criticism. Because the F-35 has been absolutely savaged in the press. Too expensive, can't dogfight, software problems, maintenance nightmares, helmet issues, oxygen system failures, ejection seat concerns, the list goes on and on. And here's the thing, a lot of that criticism was valid. The F-35 program had serious problems during development, it went over budget, timelines slipped. Early jets had real issues, but something interesting happened. As those problems got fixed, as the aircraft matured, as pilots actually flew it in combat, the criticism didn't stop, it got louder. Why? Because admitting the F-35 works means admitting that the biggest, most complex, most expensive weapons program in history actually delivered on its promises. And that's not a story that generates clicks. Let me give you some numbers that don't make headlines. Mission-capable rates, the percentage of time the jet is ready to fly, have improved every single year. The F-35A now exceeds 70%, better than many legacy fighters. Operating costs have dropped dramatically. Early estimates had the F-35 costing over $40,000 per flight hour, the current figure. And here's the big one. Every country that has flown the F-35 in combat has ordered more. Every single one. The Marines want more F-35Bs. The Navy wants more F-35Cs. The Air Force is buying over 1,700 F-35As. Britain doubled their order. Israel is buying another squadron. Italy, Australia, Japan, South Korea all increasing their purchases. You don't do that for a failed weapons system. You do that because it works, so where does this leave us? As of right now, there are over 900 F-35s flying worldwide. 9 countries are operating them, several more are in the process of receiving them. This jet is becoming the backbone of allied air power. And the combat missions, they're ongoing. Right now, today, F-35s are flying over the Middle East, protecting troops, gathering intelligence, striking targets. Most of it classified, most of it never making the news. The U.S. Marine Corps has declared their F-35Bs combat-ready for expeditionary operations worldwide. The U.S. Navy's F-35Cs are operating from carriers in the Pacific and Atlantic. The Air Force is integrating F-35As into every combat command. Britain's HMS Prince of Wales, the sister ship to Queen Elizabeth, is preparing for her own combat deployment with F-35s. Japan is building to aircraft carriers specifically designed for F-35B operations. South Korea is integrating them with their most advanced air defenses. But here's what really matters. The F-35 isn't just a fighter jet. It's a capability multiplier for the entire joint force. It makes everything else more effective, more survivable, more lethal. That's not marketing speak. That's what commanders are seeing in real combat operations. Let's go back to that night in Afghanistan. September 27, 2018, Captain Reaper, flying the 1st Marine Corps' F-35B combat mission, had no idea he was making history. To him, it was just another night, another mission, another group of Marines who needed help, but it represented something bigger. It was proof that all the years of development, all the billions of dollars, all the criticism and controversy, it had produced something real, something that works when it matters most. The F-35 will never be loved the way people love the F-16 or the F-15. It's too complicated, too expensive, too political. It doesn't have the same romance, but here's the truth that nobody wants to admit. In every combat zone where it's been deployed, the F-35 has done exactly what it was designed to do. It has dominated the airspace, protected the troops, struck the targets, and come home. The pilots flying it don't care about the controversy. The ground forces it protects don't care about the cost overruns. The allies depending on it don't care about the development delays. They care that it works, and in the end, that's the only metric that matters. The F-35's combat record is still being written. New missions are happening as we speak. Some we'll hear about years from now, some we'll never hear about at all. But the silent war continues, and the lightning is winning. If this video changed how you think about the F-35, leave a comment below. What surprised you most? What do you still want to know? And if you want more deep dives into military technology and operations, hit that subscribe button. Because this story, it's just getting started. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.